Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches a ustedes, invitados en estoy muy feliz de darle la bienvenida a este evento en nombre de los departamentos de inglés de la Universidad Kafkas y la Universidad Ordu. İyi akşamlar sevgili misafirlerimiz, değerli hocalarımız, sevgili katılımcılarımız. Kafkas Üniversitesi ve Ordu Üniversitesi İngiliz Dili ve Edebiyatı bölümleri adına sizleri bu etkinlikte ağırlamaktan mutluluk duyuyoruz. I want to continue my introduction in English. Although our participants are mainly from Ordu University and Kafkas University, there are participants from different universities in Turkey, such as Recep Tayyip Erdoğan University, Karadeniz Technical University, Atatürk University, and also several others universities in Spain that I cannot pronounce their names now. I believe that there will be a very prolific and intimate atmosphere, and we will create an opportunity to exchange ideas between the participants and our presenter. The driving force for us to organize this academic event lecture series are both to motivate our students and our colleagues to become more involved in academic careers and to elevate their stress and anxieties related to the issues during COVID-19, so the learning online. As we do have no other chance to meet physically, why not to meet online? We thought that it's a good idea to meet our students, our colleagues on this platform. Of course, this joint organization received invaluable support from both people and institutions. First, I would like to thank dear Professor Rebecca Soler Costa and her university, Zaragoza University, for accepting our invitation. Next, dear Professor Gencer Akılıç, the Dean of Faculty of Letters of Kafkas University, and also the co-moderator, Dr. Selçuk Şentürk, faculty member of Kafkas University, and English language department staffs of Ordu University. And a special thanks goes to dear Professor Dr. Mustafa Naci Kayaoğlu, head of English language and literature department of Karadeniz Technical University, and Tuncer Aydemir for his technical support and the motivation they provided for us. Now I want to mention a bit about the topic today, and also Dr. Soler Costa from Zaragoza University, Spain. The topic today is about the analysis of language of education sciences, especially from pedagogical discourse perspectives, discussed with a focus on prospects of modern educational training programs, especially on advantages and problems. Extending the topic to the digital learning in COVID era, the video conference as an interactive didactic resource, even though the topic seems to be so, let's say, tough. In fact, the ideas in the topic will attract attention of our students, and there will be an interaction part at the end of the presentation. I believe that our students will be more involved on the issue. Specifically, the main topics covered in the presentation, we'd like this teacher training degree in the COVID situation, the case study at the Faculty of Education of University of Zaragoza in a different university in Spain. Further, pedagogical innovation process in the university level, and also the higher education era. And finally, students' opinions on the level of learning and teaching in the pandemic area with the use of e-learning methods. The results will be based on this survey at the University of Rizeso. and our students have a deep experience on online learning, I believe that they can compare their experiences, what happens in Spain and what happens in Turkey. They can consider their cases, their experiences, the difficulties, the problems, the challenges they face during online learning. And finally, my final introduction will be about the presenter, dear Dr. Rebecca Soler-Costa, who is an assistant professor at the University of Zaragoza, Spain. Her areas of research centers on didactic and school organization. She has published several research works about the analysis of the language of the pedagogy from a pragmatic, discursive, and critical perspective. The power relationships in didactic communication and in the political discourse, in educative innovations and educative acts. In fact, Rebecca is my friend. We have known each other more than 11 years, and we have organized several conferences. We also published book chapters and books and papers. We have an intimacy. We have good friends for a long time. And I'm very happy to see you here, Rebecca. Before passing the words to Rebecca, the word is yours, dear Dr. Şentürk, who is going to present the program flow. Thank you very much again for participating in this event. Thank you very much. Okay, Şentürk, dear Şentürk.
Thank you, Dr. Han, for this insightful introduction. And I also would like to thank and welcome all participants, international and national ones, on behalf of Kafkas University. And I can say our gratitude goes to Catudel for their invaluable support to make this event happen. And if I'm going to outline the event briefly, we will have a short video on the University of Zaragoza for about 2 minutes, to be followed by Dr. Rebecca Soler-Costa's information for prospective students, for masters and PhDs in the University of Zaragoza. That will be really helpful for our students to get to know you and your university. And then we will start with Rebecca's actual presentation lecture on the specific topic. And at the end, we will have Q&A session and contributions. So I would like to start with a video, if I'm given the opportunity, Rebecca.
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so this video will promote the University of Zaragoza.
Place surrounded by nature. Close to everything. It's full of art, full of history. Place for sports, for fun.
place for knowledge.
Modern, a human city, and a place to be happy.
Okay, so such an amazing video, such a friendly and interactive atmosphere, city-wise and university-wise. And now I would like to pass the stage to Rebecca to have a couple of words on her own university and to introduce it to us for our prospective students. Yes, Rebecca, thank you.
Thank you very much, Seljuk. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to Turgay, to Seljuk, to Tanker, to my Turkish friends who have invited me to be able to deliver this conference today. And thanks to the use of the new technologies, you are sitting in your houses in Turkey. I'm sitting in Zaragoza in Spain, and we are able to share these knowledge contents about digital learning and about some data focusing on my university. First of all, thank you very much for the organizers. As Turgar said, we are friends since long time ago, 11 years. So we have experienced conferences, congresses, international Erasmus visits, collaborations on books and paper publications. So it's a long friendship. And when a friend asks you to support and provide his students a different perspective that can implement their knowledge, it's always a pleasure on my side. As Seljuk and Turgay introduced me, I'm Rebecca Soler and I work in the University of Zaragoza. First of all, I would like to take your attention and show just some slides about my university, focusing especially on the kind of degrees they offer for foreign students in English and where it is located. So with your permission, I'm going to share the screen. I hope it will work. So,
Yep.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it works very well.
Thank you very much, Seljuk. So I want a full presentation mode. It's working, it's running on that.
Yep.
Meanwhile, until it gets open, I would like to say that in my university, my university is located in an autonomous community called Aragon. And within Aragon, we've got three different provinces. Zaragoza, which is the main one, the largest one, and it's where the main buildings of the faculty of the university are located. And then we've got university campuses on Huesca and on Teruel. So just taking back our attention to the origins of my university, I would like to briefly introduce to you that it was originally created in 1542, as you can see, and it was created by the church initially in 1183, and it became initially the General University for All Sciences. That was one of the oldest buildings in the city, and it was undertaken by a decision of Charles V in 1542. As we go farther in time and evolution comes together, we can see this is the main building of my university. It's called Paraninfo building. It is where the rectorate is located, with the rector and all vice rectors. And it was constructed under the suggestions and conditions of Ricardo Magdalena in 1893. In fact, it is located in the city center of Zaragoza. Here it has a very nice, I'm going to project it in the next slide. It has a very nice room. It's very classic. You will see it here in this slide. So the rector and the different vice rectors usually dress with academic dresses, each one depending on the color, depending on the degree they belong to. For example, red color, it is usually for the Faculty of Law. Light blue, it's for our faculty, for the Faculty of Education. Yellow color, it's usually for medicine and science, related to science degrees. And this is the main room with some nice decoration, angels and very cultural images. It's called Paraninfo Hall, and it's used for solemn ceremonies. As I told you, if we take a map of the European Union and we focus our attention in Spain, you will see here this orange area. This is my autonomous community called Aragon. And within that, we've got 3 different provinces. Here it's located Zaragoza. Somehow we are in the middle between Madrid and Barcelona, just halfway. And within the autonomous community of Aragon, we've got 3 provinces. Currently, I'm living here in Zaragoza, which is the main one, the capital. We've got Teruel and Huesca, and there are some campuses and faculties in Huesca and in Teruel. In Zaragoza, we've got 12, and in Huesca and Teruel, 5. And they also deliver summer courses for summertime. Just some general knowledge about the city to grasp your attention, and then we will focus on some degree information. Zaragoza is an ancient city. It has more than 2,200 years old, and some representative buildings from the Caesar Augusta city are those ones, the Roman walls located in the main square of Zaragoza, and the Roman theater. In this slide, I project you an Islamic palace called Al Jaferia. It's very representative, and currently foreign visitors can enter, and there are some guided tours, but mainly it's used for the Aragonese Parliament, for our autonomous government, to have meetings inside and to deliver about political decisions. This is our cathedral. It's called Pilar Cathedral in honor of the Virgin Pilar. And it's located in the river. We've got a very big river in the city. It's called Ebro River. And this cathedral, it was a long time. It was created around those dates, and mainly today it has a very good representation of cultural heritage in the city. This belongs to downtown, to the historic town. Here, I would like to present you a brief overview from the sky. This is the Pilar Cathedral. This is the Ebro River. We've got some representative bridges, such as the Stone Bridge. It's this one I'm pointing here. And this is the city. This is the city center, and those are some other areas of the city that grow later and expanded with the creation of new urban areas. With regards to architecture, we've got representative buildings. If you remember, in 2008, the Expo, the International Exposition, was delivered here in Zaragoza. So they created, they designed, they constructed some representative bridges like this one, or special buildings like this one. This is called the water tower, and they are representative somehow. Nowadays, most of them they are used for political decisions or as a judge, you know, with judges. Here, just some images about Huesca. Huesca is located in the Pyrenees of the community. So you can find there nature, rivers, mountains to practice some skiing. So it's quite motivated. The city itself, it's very small, but it has different possibilities to practice rafting, to do climbing, to go biking, skiing, etc. Teruel is smaller than Huesca. In fact, it is the smallest one, but it's very cute because it's like a medieval city. So as you can see here, this is the main square. And typically the weather is quite cold in Teruel and up in the Pyrenees. Taking our attention back to our university degrees, I would like to insist on our multidisciplinary university. Why is it called multidisciplinary? Because we offer degrees concerning humanities in general terms, social and law degrees, experimental sciences, biosciences and health, and others related to engineering and architecture. With regards to studies, to be more precise, we've got 55 bachelor's degrees, 55 master degrees, especially to develop most of them 45 doctoral programs, and then 19 specific courses. A specific course can be, for example, a Spanish course for foreign students who want to be students in the university and need some kind of training in order to get integrated with the rest of their class. Particularly, we've got here different possibilities. With regards to schools, faculties and centers, my university has 21 faculties with schools and other affiliated centers, 57 different departments, 1 doctoral school for the whole university, and then each faculty has a doctoral section, and 13 institutes, which mainly refer to scientific institutes. Nanotechnology, engineering, etc. On the other hand, just to give you an idea of how many people, how many students and the staff involved in my university, we've got 54% of bachelor students, 53% of master students, with some PhD students, which is not so bad, is 50%. Then we always have a good ratio of international students. Usually Zaragoza is chosen as one of the cities to participate in Erasmus training programs from European Union, and some academic staff and administrative staff with percentages. With regards to the grade studies, as I introduced you before, most of them refer to arts and sciences, sciences in general terms, health sciences or social sciences and law. We've got also engineering and faculties of humanities and education. Particularly, I teach here in this one, but in Zaragoza, not in Huesca. Here we've got the offer of master studies. So as you can see, the School of Engineering and Architecture has lots of master with different possibilities. The Faculty of Health Sciences as well, Faculty of Sciences, and then Faculty of Economic and Business Sciences, Faculty of Labor and Social Sciences, Faculty of Law, and Faculty of Education. Particularly, in my faculty, we offer 4 different types of training: primary education training, infant education training, and then we've got the Master in Lifelong Learning in a multicultural context, and the teacher program, which is a professionalized master for students who want to later on teach in high schools and secondary education schools. Last but not least, with regards to our internationalization with Erasmus students and other kind of students who frequently come to our university, I must say it's very operative because it has lots of double degrees. Double degrees, for example, one of those options is concerned with the Faculty of Economy. It's a mixture with students study on the one hand law and on the other hand economy, and it's called a degree in economy and law. And it's very attractive for students because in fact it is the one that offers more possibilities to later on engage in society and participate as citizens. We've got 2,000 agreements all around the world for mobility with master students, doctorate students, and degrees. Studying at the University of Zaragoza can be mainly with the Erasmus Plus programs, Erasmus Plus, and then the university also has other possibilities offered by some countries under the certificate of international students, right? And it's called Excellent International Student Satisfaction. And students usually agree in coming here, and they spend a good time they meet friends. We've got here somehow Turkey and Spain are very similar countries, and we usually receive lots of students in this sense. And just the last slide, some images of rooms to study in different faculties. That's the main campus, and some other images of sport. We also have a sport team, many different sports teams of rugby, football, basket, whatever. So students usually are very integrated, and they spend good time when they come here. So this is the presentation of the University of Zaragoza, and please feel totally free if you want to ask me some questions about how we work, whatever you want to know about.
Okay, Rebecca, thanks for this insightful and inclusive presentation about your university. And I can see a kind of civilization embedded under the roof of university. Exactly. So you also have shown us the ways in which we can collaborate for further. And hopefully I'm sending my CV tomorrow. Okay.
No doubt,
so,
please send it, and yeah, we will manage to
okay.
get the
Thank
way
you.
to
Thank you very much. So we are just getting to the actual presentation now, and I have a couple of announcements before we kick off for the lecture. And I just would like the attention of the participants on the certificate of participation. It will be shared in the chat box. So once you see this link, please feel free to fill the form so that you have your certificate. And also, Dr. Solar Costa, the stage is yours now, and I will kindly ask my participants, our participants, to keep their seatbelts fastened. Thank you very much. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Now, after the introduction of my university, as Seljuk said, we are going to give way to the main presentation. Particularly when my friend tour guide asked me to participate in this conference with MA students and other representatives of the university, I thought, okay, Rebecca, how can you help those students to get a better, a more detailed idea of how this pandemic situation is affecting society in general terms, but more precisely our teaching learning processes. So guess for a moment how technologies can help in this COVID situation. Are they helping us to get in touch with other people to deliver our teaching sessions? Somehow, are they supportive tools in our processes? Or on the other hand, what students need to feel integrated in this learning process? Obviously, when a pandemic situation emerges, like it's been the COVID situation, we need to adapt to what authorities prescribe as compulsory for every citizen. And obviously, we need to continue with our works and develop as professionals. So somehow, which devices do you think best contribute to our teaching? I would like to raise those three questions just to, first of all, try to create an initial atmosphere and then gradually introduce you to my main topic. In this presentation, I wanted to focus on how the language of education sciences, that's to say, how the language of pedagogy, the didactic language, is used in this COVID situation, which mainly generated a digital learning process. In this sense, we are going to focus on some prospects of modern educational training programs, and I will introduce you to the video conference as an interactive didactic resource that can be very, very useful. But basically, whenever we approach the language of educational sciences, we need to, first of all, restrict our attention to the way we are delivering our teaching sessions. Obviously, this COVID situation has forced us to use digital technologies and, in fact, digital learning to compel with our responsibilities as university teachers. Right, that's the initial assumption, and obviously we need to go further. In this sense, in this slide, I would like to show you as an agenda, as a kind of index. We're going to have a brief introduction, especially on how technologies can be of help in this pandemic situation. Thus, we will focus on the pedagogical innovation processes, mainly derived in the university level. And obviously, in order to get that knowledge, we need to, first of all, restrict our attention to the European higher education area. Why? Because it was in 2010 when universities, following the European prescriptions, started to somehow universalize the different degrees. That's to say, the teacher training degree used to have 3 years training. So students who want to be future teachers, who want to be pre-service teachers, needed to study 3 years. After those 3 years, they just were able to go to a public examination process and act as primary or secondary education students. But what happened in 2010 when the European prescriptions forced all European countries and some other non-European to modify, to standardize all degrees into 4 years length. In the teacher training degree, in Spain, we introduced more school placement periods because somehow we needed to expand the training of our students 1 more year. In this sense, the teacher training degree, after those European prescriptions, instead of having 3 years length, it has 4 years length, what means more practical knowledge delivered through more school placements in our faculties. In this sense, we are going to analyze along this session how the teacher training degree in this COVID situation is delivering knowledge, how they are offering the teaching learning processes, under what basis and under what strategies and type of learning. In this sense, I will introduce you to a case study, just as an example, I participate with one of my friends in Poland in the University of Rzeszów in an international study on how students feel learning was delivered in this pandemic situation. And we created a case study in order to check during this pandemic situation how the learning was delivered and achieved. In this sense, I will project on some students' opinions on the level of learning and teaching in this pandemic era, especially with e-learning methods, mainly based on those questionnaires and surveys we deliver in both universities. Obviously, one of the starting points I would like to focus on refers to the COVID situation generated in educational institutions. As you well know, mobile devices are revolutionary elements that offer many possibilities, although they can also cause problems for some users. This is the case with the development of addictive behaviors that can affect the well-being of some students. For this reason, in this pandemic situation, the use of digital learning can be greatly extended because it can highly contribute to the knowledge of our students, but we need to be careful because it can promote also those kind of addictive behaviors. In this sense, our present-day society, in a generalized way, centered the attention on technology, and everything nowadays is derived from it. Thus, people are increasingly dependent on this element. Most citizens, even kids from 3-4 years old onwards, they know how to manage a computer or a mobile. The cell phone seems to be a revolutionary element on the world, and we understand it. It has also been the subject to change since the advent of internet and different applications requiring its use. Mobile devices have managed to make the world of video games, of shopping, and quick, easy access to information, among many other things. And somehow they offer accessible knowledge to our students. In the same way, the information exchange through platforms and social networks such as Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, has contributed to the streamlined and has transformed knowledge, being internet a good and grateful resource to be introduced. We must add the appearance of smartphones, which have contributed to the development of these potentialities regarding intercommunications and access to the network. However, despite the advantages we can find on those tools, the appearance of the smartphone and therefore the increasing use in all areas and contexts has also reported some irresponsible uses that have caused the appearance of new phenomena such as cyberbullying. In this sense, we need to be especially careful because the use of mobile phones has meant a massive use of elements such as social networks. These represent at the present moment a basic virtual element that is used in the majority of people in society. Undoubtedly, where these elements are most successful is obviously among young people, since they allow relations and the exchange of information and content on any subject to be reached between the different levels. This new scenario, in this sense, this new teaching needs derived mainly focus on these foundations of the new emerging digital society. In this context, the social network, Instagram, which in spite of being only a few years ago, the population enjoys greatly relevance, occupying many hours of life of users. That is to say, Some social networks enable different options for communication and for the sharing of material and visual contents, but obviously we need to be careful on how these applications undergone and the growth in recent times. The advantages of using these social networks are varied and affect elements such as oral or linguistic competence. But on the other hand, they can also have lots of consequences. In this sense, some questions I would like to arise here refer to when we discern what is causing this, the problematic smartphone use or the social network in particular. In this teaching scenario, basically, most of our lessons were delivered with Meet Google, and students were sitting in their houses like you are doing now, and teachers were in our houses, obviously with following all prescriptions by government, and we were using those kind of programs of applications to deliver our teaching sessions. Obviously, in the university level, we must compel with competencies that imply methodological changes and that improve the learning of our students. In this sense, the quality in the teaching learning processes is necessary to be assumed. And this Meet Google and Zoom and other applications constitute what is called with what is referred to as the virtual learning environments. In this sense, this innovation era compels us to change education from the first links and to receive real learning in our students. Some of the consequences directly associated with those changes are found within the European higher education area. What prescriptions were introduced at that time? In the European higher education area, it was in 2010, didactic implications among teachers of different knowledge areas were introduced, and somehow teachers were suggested to share our methodological perspectives, our methodological principles in order to help students in their learning processes. In this sense, the teacher training degree, particularly in this situation, in this pandemic situation, is the chance to offer a powerful interactive didactic resource. That's to say, the video conference. In this sense, this allows active participation in students, even when in my city we had a lockdown. Thanks to these virtual learning environments, students could participate in their school placements. Something similar occurred in Czechia, in Poland, and I'm sure in Turkey and in many other cities. For this reason, in order to make easier the students' engagement in the different modules of the teacher training degree, along this paper, along this conference, we are going to focus on the positive effects video conference has always understood as a powerful tool to directly enhance the performance of schools in specific sessions and offer students a direct feedback while complemented with other perspectives. In this sense, based on pedagogical innovation processes in the university level, we designed a case study in order to analyze how the training of our undergraduates, how the training of our pre-service teachers was being delivered. In this sense, in the case study, 3 pre-service teachers participated, and they were placed in one group of students. We decided to focus on an English lesson focused on modal verbs, and each group of students planned lessons with the help of the classroom teacher, focusing on resources and materials needed. Each session lasted more or less around 50 minutes, and it was followed obviously by discussions and reflections of the teacher. In this sense, the group discussion took place immediately after each lesson, and it allowed pre-service teachers as we focused on strengths and weaknesses. In fact, moreover, we developed a reflecting period focused on strengths and weaknesses, and in this sense, we were able to expand this reflecting period on how teaching was delivered, so students were asked to participate in the group discussion with a blackboard and with some informal interviews. In this sense, we contribute to the enhancement of this digital learning. Our research mainly focused on questioning skills related to the teaching through the video conference, understood as a didactic resource and somehow as a provider of academic components of the lesson. In this sense, students learned from their own strengths and weaknesses in an innovative way with the use of these new virtual learning environments. Some difficulties emerged with some students who did not plan to follow properly those lessons, and obviously we needed to deal with the unexpected, because as it usually happens, some unexpected processes can emerge. It is clear enough that the teaching profession can never rest, can never be laid down in the initial training, but rather it requires much more, especially in this quick area of changes and scientific knowledge and technology. We need to introduce some new assessing processes whenever we focus on these virtual learning environments. Why? Because we need to reinforce the training offered to students, and in this sense, it is not enough with the introduction of innovations in the way we deliver our teaching processes. That's to say, when we provide students with digital learning, we also have to provide them with the necessary methodological approaches to be able to get engaged in these digital virtual learning environments. The teaching profession, as we said, needs to be constantly updated, never lay down to our initial training processes, and always understood as something in service, in period. So, as it can be seen, modern education training programs, especially in this COVID situation, obviously allow for interactive, for social, for collaborative learning, especially in higher education. So far, I would like to show you some of the results basically extracted, basically derived from this digital learning introduced with the use of the video conference. And my dear students, I would like to be a kind of motivator to promote in your inputs, in your input knowledge, some erasing questions in order to motivate you to develop a study, and we can compare, we can establish comparisons between Turkey and Spanish teaching learning processes. It could be very interesting. So I invite you, following the schedule, the organization of this research, this design, to participate with me and to contribute to expand our results. In this sense, I'm going to offer you some of the results mainly based on students' opinions on the level of learning in the teaching in this COVID era, in the use of e-learning, which is the same like digital learning or blended learning, okay? Some Polish students from the University of Rzeszów is pronounced. I know it's very rare, and it's located in the southeast of Poland. Some Polish students have a warranted right to education. What does it mean? They consider education is free and paid, and consequently, they have to offer government and different stakeholders and people who are in political jobs some educational services. This right is regulated by the Constitution of the Republic of Poland with the Constitution for Science. They've got an act on higher education recently approved due to this COVID situation. The act mainly contains provisions on how universities must work in this extraordinary condition. At the time of the declaration of the pandemic, the rector's orders of the University of Rzeszów mainly referred to the prescriptions determined by the minister ordinances. And obviously universities need to follow those prescriptions. In Spain, it happened exactly the same. Madrid and the central government in Madrid determined some prescriptions, and then each autonomous community needs to follow those prescriptions. Some university authorities not strictly developed those procedures, and obviously they needed to clarify how they were going to develop training, what were their provisions, the interpretation of legal acts, and even the clarification of those provisions. In this sense, it was not enough, it was a lack of sufficient information technologies and hardware facilities, both for teachers and for students. What happened? The savings. It was group size, small classrooms, and in this sense, students refer to lots of deficiencies in their teaching learning processes. Some students' opinions collected on the ongoing basis take into account that an average of students, it was a small percentage, 50 to 7 students were participating, were engaged in those ongoing bases. All colleagues of the University of Rzeszów indicated that students point out that university was not enough equipped with fast and efficient internet uses. In this sense, some colleagues of the Rzeszów University stand out that students point out insufficient preparation of lectures delivered with this digital learning, arguing that some teachers were not prepared enough to provide that kind of training. And in this sense, there were some questions raising about how teachers coped with the delivering of those classes, how lessons were descriptive or not, how were the shortcomings, how was the preparation of the different teaching learning sessions, and so on. Last but not least, in the fields of study that somehow require a lot of work and effort on the part of students and teachers, for example, medicine, law, obviously the comments were more logical because, I mean, medicine students obviously needs to develop their practical sessions, for example, in hospitals. I mean, that is something digital learning cannot cover enough well as to provide students with what they need. However, the students did not hide their disappointments with the educational offer and the lack of practical classes, but rather they emphasized quite satisfaction with the savings made, okay? The savings concerning obviously with housing and with living costs. Obviously, they argue nobody paid attention to the fact that remote studies generate differences enormous considering costs in the university, and obviously that nobody counted the enormous workload of teachers who had to supplement their materials from the form of their own knowledge to an electronic document from overnight, because it was something immediate, it was something that happened really quick. In this sense, the author's hypothesis is that it could be different if the ordinances of the Ministry of Higher Education converted the remote form of teaching as equivalent to full-time or, more important, no perspective thinking about the information society, e-science, and e-work. Obviously, I agree that when a pandemic situation emerges, we are not prepared for that and we need to adapt. But we need basic resources to do it, and obviously have a good feeling and a positive attitude to be able to overcome those teaching learning situations and use relevant methodological approaches in order to make students easier their learning processes. In this sense, some concluding remarks I would like to show you before the question and answer turn. I would like to insist that obviously we are experiencing a technological and mental revolution of the whole society, and no doubt it will have consequences in our teaching learning processes and consequences as you are experiencing as students. No doubt as teachers, we have to prepare ourselves to be able to uphill this process and adapt to the new situation. Decisions are made excluding the participation of world citizens. And last but not least, as it is currently said, self-esteem is something necessary and something we need to continue supporting in our students. The intensive use of digital learning can help students to feel engaged in the teaching learning processes, but if it is not well planned, if it is not well structured, it can lead to confusing knowledge. That is why personal tutorization, personal meetings with students and teachers are quite necessary. On the other hand, the use of Instagram, the use of LinkedIn, the use of other different social networks can really help, but training is in the responsible use of these technological devices is required in order to avoid that those addictive attitudes could emerge and we must prevent future cases of cyberbullying and this kind of negative attitudes. Another big conclusion we can derive is that we live in an ongoing society. What does it mean? 10 years ago, it was not easy to think, to conceive our teaching learning processes could be developed in such a globalized way. Nowadays, for example, currently in this situation, we are participating in an online conference trying to expand and disseminate knowledge to enrich our students' knowledge and attitudes towards learning. In this globalized society, we need to make sure that, first of all, curricular planification is suitable for the group class we are going to work with. Secondly, we need to ask ourselves what kind of methodological principles, what kind of methodological approaches are best suited for our students. Obviously, video conference as such is not didactic, but when it is consequently and positively adapted in our teaching learning processes, it can be of help, especially in this pandemic, in this COVID situation. No doubt, if we are modifying the development of the teaching learning processes with new methodological approaches, we also need to be coherent and we also need to introduce suitable assessment processes, because it makes no sense we teach in one way and we assess in a different way. That is why we need to be coherent, we need to be sensible with this situation, try to make the best of ourselves and try to use different didactic resources, even social networks, suitably in order to help students in their achievement processes. I think that's indispensable, particularly in this current situation we are in. And I think we have learned many, many positive things from this pandemic situation. Learning can be developed with interactive tools such as video conference, and it can help students to continue with their training processes. And technologies have been created to help us if they are suitably introduced. It has been a great pleasure, my students, to show you this case study developed in this pandemic situation. Just I provide here some bibliography, for example, mobile devices for learning, which was a research I developed with some colleagues from the University of Granada. It is located in the south of Spain. I'm not sure if when I share my screen, can you see me, or you can just see the screen, but it doesn't really matter as far as you can focus on what I highlight.
Okay,
For
we see
example,
both. We see both.
Both?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. That's very good. Thank you very much. On the other hand, Arduino advances in Web of Science. There we focus on scientific mapping, effectiveness of diet habits, and active life in vocational training. We are very concerned in how vocational training, how students are participating, especially in their placements, what didactics are there. And last but not least, it's about gamification. Gamification refers to how the use of interactive tools can help in our teaching processes. And somehow this kind of literature review really helped me to prepare this conference session focusing on this digital learning. No doubt, whenever we use information and communication technologies, the way we use that pedagogical language is indispensable, because nowadays, for example, everybody refers to virtual learning environments as something really, really well known in society. In fact, it is a very useful interactive tool, but obviously we need not just to refer to virtual learning environments as such, but to ask ourselves, okay, how can I plan a teaching session with my students using virtual learning environments? The contents delivered with the camera, with the video conference, can be useful as far as I also kind of introduce my students' participation. How? Asking them questions, showing them results of recent paper publication, etc. In this sense, my dear students, my dear colleagues, it has been a great pleasure to deliver my speech, and I'm at your disposal to answer any questions you may have, or if you want me any other suggestion. It's just your time, and I give you the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So especially having the time with us at the weekend. That is very nice and kind of you. Thank you. So yeah, we had lots of things from your presentations, lots of new terminology, if we can call it, like addictive behavior, in-service training, motivation. So it was a kind of recapping the process we are going through. So in this sense, it was really invaluable. In Turkey, it has started on March 2020. And since then, we have been always complaining about the online education. You know, we're talking about the cons rather than pros. So we're saying students cannot benefit. So, but as you just suggested, there are the things we can take from positive perspectives, like we become literate digitally, you know, digital literacy, which is really nice to see. And then again, your phrase, a kind of technological and mental revolution. So rather than complaining about online education, let's focus that education as a kind of new platform to interact with each other, as we do in here. So in this sense, it was a kind of eye-opener, and thank you very much. And now I just would like to open the ground for the questions and contributions, if I can. I can see very notable scholars from different universities of Turkey, like Ömer Hocam from Süleyman Demirel University, and Cüneyt Hocam from Ordu University, and I can't see the rest of them, sorry. And the ground is yours. Please feel free to contribute and ask any questions you feel that you need to ask. I mean, students, lecturers, please, the ground is yours.
I think, sir, I think I can see a question on the chat box.
Okay, Hocam.
I can pronounce it for you.
Yeah, sure.
The questions come from Samet Aslanoğlu. He asked, first of all, thanks for your wonderful presentation. We have sometimes problems regarding flow. What can you suggest us, dear Rebecca? I think Samet mentions here the general student behavior on online learning. Why? Because I can mention about my real experiences in the sense our students do not want to display themselves on the online education during our courses. They do not switch on their cameras, even they do not use their microphones to participate and raise their hands. They just sit back and back of the screen and just listen to us. I complain about this case as well because I do not see any flow from students' perspectives. When I ask them, why do you want to display yourself on my courses? The reason is me, or because I do not present a good flow in my education, or what else? They mostly mention about their experiences regarding their affection, because they do not feel very happy to continue their education online. They want to smell the weather in the campus. They want to be in the classes. They want to cooperate with their peers, talk to their peers. Although online education gives us several flexibility, such as they can listen to any courses irrespective of the scheduled time. They can listen to the course anytime because the courses are recorded. Yes, there are several advantages we now see, we have realized of the online education. But the problem is, both from teachers' perspective and student perspectives, is flow. Students cannot follow the courses. They are not concentrate on the classes. As students are same. Students are always same. Students are always students. I believe that the case should be the same in your country. So what do you do specifically? I really want your answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Turgay, Han. This is a very difficult situation we also experienced in this pandemic situation. And in fact, it's been really difficult to deal with, because I totally agree with you, Professor Han. When we deliver our teaching sessions with the video camera, students are in other parts, and most of them even put a frozen image. So it's like you are talking just with the camera and guessing. Students will be listening to you and getting learning. That's why in order to offer digital learning, and this is something especially United States have researched quite a lot, only blended learning or e-learning should be suitable in university students. I mean, in adult students who, first of all, are very motivated towards learning, and they feel contents attractive enough as to focus their attention. When I participate in the teaching sessions with the video camera, obviously I tried to motivate them, asking them questions to promote their participation, but it's quite frequent that response that they are like in behind, they just switch out the camera and they tried just to listen to your content. So a kind of generation of debate could be helpful. But I mean, and particularly in Spain, it also happened, the online situation in primary and secondary education, which, trust me, it was totally crazy because kids are not adults. And if even for an adult, it's quite difficult to follow a lesson online, guess for a kid of 7 or 10 years old. So first of all, I think society in general terms is not prepared for this kind of learning. It can be gradually implemented, but with very clear basis, with very clear methodological foundations, and obviously with a very positive attitude towards learning. That's the only way we can manage to cope with this type of learning.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So we have some other questions if we can continue, by your permission. One question is really a striking one that we are struggling with. It links to socioeconomic conditions from Melahat, and she's asking, I am very confused about the future of my children who don't have money to buy a computer or internet. So what kind of link do you see between the improvement of online education in economically lower countries?
That's a very good question, Seljuk, because, for example, my region is not so poor one. It's like middle class, for example, but obviously when the pandemic situation emerged, we are middle low class, right?
Okay.
Many students do not have a computer to have their lessons online. So what university did, it was a great measure to be assumed, is university asked for money to the government of Aragon, and they provide students, lending them computers, laptops to be returned, obviously after the pandemic situation. But one of the interesting aspects to be considered is that how online learning, first of all, I'm not sure if totally it can replace formal learning, as Omer suggested,
Yes.
and Merv written on the chat, because I mean some contents in some degrees can delivered with online learning, but obviously medicine or engineering or chemistry have specific contents that can only be achieved in specific places, you know. Obviously, for example, in Canada, I also work with one colleague who works in Canada. He's Chinese, but he's been living in Edmonton, which is in the northwest of Canada for a long time ago. It is called Athabasca University, and it is just an online university, okay? It is no way to have lessons in the faculties. Obviously, it can only offer doctoral studies. I mean, for doctoral studies, Athabasca University is very useful because I can be here and I can develop my doctoral program in Canada, which is another country. I pay the fees and I get into it. But obviously, in order to get degree training, not doctoral training, but degree training, that is something especially difficult for some degrees. And on the other hand, those economic conditions really restrict the possibilities of our students. I don't know how your university dealt with in the pandemic situation, but here we can borrow some students computers, but obviously university didn't pay them internet connection to study at home, you know, and a printer to get some papers printed. So in general terms, I think we are not prepared enough for that.
Okay, yeah, that is quite clear. Yeah, why not maybe countries, this will urge countries to invest more in technology rather than other stuff. Let's see what comes up. Okay, another question is from Professor Umut Çanarı. So it's just a kind of, not a question, but a kind of contribution maybe. Thank you for your presentation and information about online education. I have another question about online education. I want to know of your opinion about online education success compared to conventional method. Especially students can pick up very well the information compared to normal education. So he's just comparing the two education and suggesting that the online education benefits students maybe more from the conventional one. What is your opinion on this issue?
Somehow I think online education benefits students if they have the necessary resources. I mean, if students have a room, a computer, an internet connection, it can be very useful because digital learning, if it's well planned from the didactic perspective, can be delivered like now or physically in a classroom, you know. But in order for online learning to be effective, we need to have a set of conditions around us, okay? Groups need to be reduced because, for example, now I'm the tutor, I'm the supervisor of 47 students in their school placements. Obviously, I cannot set a call for all students in order to offer them guidelines because I need a direct interaction with them. I need each one of the students to tell me how he is participating in the school placement, what does he need. Obviously, this online learning also requires much more work from teachers. And I guess we share the opinion since the pandemic situation, we are sitting in our professional rooms at home, working lots of hours per day. But obviously, if we have those conditions, it can work and it can be even better than formal learning, formal face-to-face learning. But when having that set of conditions.
Okay, thank you. So I think your presentation opened up really mind-burning questions for the platform. And another one is from Rukiye Odabash and saying, I want to ask a question. We have several students who have different family types. So it relates to family types. Some families don't believe the advantages of the online education. They think that their children cannot learn via digital tools. So what can you suggest for the families or for training families? How can we change their beliefs or opinions about online education? Thanks a lot.
Dear Odavas, that's a very, very good question, good assumption. And I would like to offer you an example. If, I don't know how old are you, but I guess, for example, we are 20 years ago, okay? And could you imagine that learning 20 years later was going to be developed with online education, that almost every kid is going to have a mobile, a tablet, or a computer? It was something, it was not feasible, it was not possible to think about it 10 years ago. What I'm saying is that as time evolves and society evolves, we will get integrated gradually in these new learning processes, in this digital learning. But obviously, it takes time. It implies changes in society because I think, first of all, stakeholders, those people who work creating political prescriptions for education, needs to introduce many changes because, I mean, it doesn't make sense we teach from digital learning and we don't change the assessment processes. So we need to be coherent. If teaching changes, assessment changes. So I think time by time, these families will see that digital learning is gradually more and more introduced in society, and it expands until everyone gets to it.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. I hope that answers the question. And I can see Cüneyt Hocam from Ordu University. I'm sure he might have some contributions, if not the questions, maybe. Hocam?
Of course, thanks for your presentation. It was very lovely and wonderful. I have some worries and would like to ask a question to Rebecca.
Mhm.
Dear Rebecca, the era we live is in a parallel with technology, and a concept called post-human has emerged. Communication is no longer face-to-face, but through computers. Considering the concept of transhumanism is on the agenda and artificial intelligence, will we, the humans, be witnesses of the disappearance of communication, or will we be talking like programmed robots or talk through technology? What can you say the future of human communication?
Thank you very much for Osata, for your suggestions, for your considerations. And first of all, I think that somehow this moves like in society. I mean, you can teach to your students like today I'm doing with you, just taking, you know, my notes and reading everything, or trying like I tried to did to make it interactive and try to be talking with you through the use of the video camera instead of reading guidelines, right? So I think it's a similar process. I mean, online learning or blended learning does not necessarily need to end up in a robotic transmission of contents, but it will depend always on the attitude, as I said in my presentation, and on the desire of the speaker, you know. When we deliver a speech and we just read the contents from the bottom to the top, and we do not provide any more information, we make it bored, and students and audience in general terms may feel bored. But if we try to interact with them, like I suggested to Professor Han, asking questions to students, somehow enhancing, promoting their motivation, I think online learning can be really useful and helpful, but obviously in the future and with so many measurements and conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you, Cüneyt Hocam, for that fascinating
Hocam,
question.
thank you very much for your
As well.
participation. Rebecca
thank you.
is a very close colleague from here, from my department. I want to send my special thanks for his participation and the good question. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Rebecca, we have been continuing to distort your mind if you have the permission, if you have the permission.
Of course, go
And-
ahead.
Okay, thanks. And another question comes from Professor Ömer Şekerci, and he is the head of Department of Süleyman Demirel University, Western Languages and Literatures. So he is asking, to what extent can online education fulfill students emotionally, as teaching is somehow emotion?
That's a very
So
good
that relates to Cüneyt's question in somehow, and so, yep.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I'm very thankful for having this issue to go over, because I totally agree with the head of the department, with Homer, when the person who wrote this, because I think teaching is very emotive, and when we teach, we transmit some kind our likes and dislikes and what we better fit to. For example, I'm going to ask you one thing. If you think in your primary education, okay, and I ask you, what is the best thing you remember from that period? I'm sure the best thing you will remember from your primary education will be one teacher who actively introduce you the contents, so you like the contents, and the teacher who was delivering that knowledge. What I'm referring to now is that as far as we are able to keep on transmitting those values while we teach, we can use online learning or face-to-face learning. It doesn't really matter as far as we are able to share with those emotions. It's the same, for example, when students feel disregarded, or when students feel with non-motivation processes, right? We need to introduce in our teaching learning processes some inputs to grasp their attention and feel them integrated in the process. So I think obviously teaching has much to do with emotions, and as the answer to the Urdu, to the other university teacher who asked me that question, we need to cope with our attitude and try to transmit the best with our students.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, in relation to emotions, it was last week I just received a kind of criticism, if we can call it. And a student just said, you're okay. I mean, you just lecture, but we need more of being asked, how are we, because you just simply say, okay, I hope you're all okay. So let's get down onto the business. So they said, we need more of these to be asked, how are we? So yeah, a kind of sharing information. So coming to this side, I mean, this side, the students' perspectives, and we really would like to hear about from students, because we heard from the professors, education is two-sided. One side is them and the other side is us, ourselves. So how about the students? How do they go through the process? Any comments, any contributions would be more than welcome. And I can see one question, I think from a student. Many thanks for the presentation and for your time, Rebecca. Have a question. Out of 10, how would you rate the efficiency of the online education? Rating.
Out of 10, I would say online education could be rated as almost 8. I mean, for me, it's not the whole, because as I said, we really need many things to be changed in order to get the best, and we are not ready yet. But we are in a good process. We have been able during this COVID situation to adapt to totally a different way of teaching, totally different methodological approaches, assessment, contact with students, and that demonstrates we are ready for that. I mean, we deserve that. We want to participate in that, but obviously up to date, it cannot, for me, it cannot reach the 10%, but rather an 8% could be possible, because if students would have the necessary resources and if teachers have the necessary time to plan their teaching sessions, online learning can perfectly work in our case. Obviously, it would be different in medicine or in engineering or some other degrees, but in education or in cultural studies, English philology, those degrees, if it's well planned, well distributed, it can perfectly work.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So I feel that we are approaching to the end, but not the end, of course, in another way. So quickly reading some comments for you. Thanks for that great presentation. Ms. Solar, I'm working as a teacher in a concept college, includes primary, secondary, and high school at the same time. You know what, we had to adapt COVID period fast, and we used some applications and devices, but these are not enough for controlling the exam situations. And this issue is really big problem for us. What are you using as a devices for checking children's knowledge in your country? So a country and a cultural specific question coming to you, Rebecca.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. For me, it's very difficult to pronounce the name of the person who wrote this. Okay. Okay.
Okay, good try.
Thank you. And we find the same situation here. I mean, that's why I insisted in my presentation saying it's not just teaching, but it's also evaluating, it's also assessing the students' knowledge. For example, in my university, we delivered assessment processes through Moodle. You know, Moodle, it's a platform where you can create, design an online exam, and students can participate. And then in some subjects, in some modules where the contents are more descriptive, what we provided in my department were individual tutorships with students, so they expound orally the reports to the teacher, and somehow you get a combination of testing processes with the Moodle platform and qualitative knowledge through the assessment of those interviews. Obviously, as I said, with kids, even with teenagers, this is very difficult, and that's why I stated it is better and it works better with university students as far as they are adults.
Okay, thank you. So there was another, like a kind of question on contribution, mixed a very different perspective, and he is from Hussein Taji. It is from Hussein Taji, and he's asking, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very productive. Many countries switched to online education due to the pandemic, and unexpectedly, the damage was greater than the benefit. Yeah, this is really striking. We experienced these in a short time. When the pandemic is over, do you think it can be recovered in a short time, or will this damage continue for a long time? So it is the balance between benefit and damage.
Yeah, Hussein, I think obviously this pandemic has caused a damage because it has altered the teaching learning processes in primary education students, secondary education students, university students. In some educational stages, it could be possible to little by little recover that content. But with kids, for example, or even with teenagers, it's going to be a big problem. I guess that politicians and stakeholders will somehow react when this pandemic situation ends up and create a, I don't know how to say it, but
maybe a backup plan. Right?
Exactly, maybe that's what I wanted to say, because I think it's totally necessary, because it's obvious the damage it has caused is enormous. We have survived to the situation, we have adapted to the situation, but with no good results, because we were not prepared for that.
Okay, thank you. So let's get down to the bottom. And then there are two questions in regards to the teaching methods or approaches you employ in your own educational settings. One is from Sabahat, asking which language teaching methods do you suggest, why? And the next one is from Professor Naji Kayolu, and he's the head of Department of English Language Literature at Karadeniz Technical University. And he is asking, I missed some parts of the presentation, so the question might have already been answered. How do Spanish teachers and lecturers approach the online education in general? So method-wise and teaching-wise, the two questions.
Spanish teachers, what we usually do in the university level during the pandemic situation is that theoretical lectures were delivered with a video conference system, with attending all students for one session. And then it was established those individual tutorships with students in order to focus with some doubts and deal with non-delivered knowledge or doubts they may have. Basically, that was the working way. I mean, even with school placements, they weren't able to attend schools. So with the virtual learning environment created by the school, they participated in the school placements. Obviously, you may ask me, it's not the same when a student goes to a primary school and does observations, that when he participates in those school placements with the video camera, with the video conference, etc. And we tried to do like you and like many other countries with our best intention, but obviously we were not prepared for that. And materials need also to be adapted and modified. I mean, lectures do not need to focus just on physical presentation of material, but we need to go further and always provide students with actual and new input to get them a meaningful learning, a competence meaningful learning.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. I think the next question has already been touched upon in regards to materials from Mert Furkan. Thanks for this question. And if we can have, I know that we are giving you some online pain, you know, sorry. So if we have just very, very last questions, maybe two, that will be great. Okay. So Hatice Buket Aslantaş from Kafkas University, our last year student. Sorry, our last year, yeah. Thank you very much for your great session. Warm regards from Kafkas Uni. I would like to ask a question. I think online classes are a kind of emotional challenge for knowing teachers or students and participate in classes as a student or a teacher. How could you overcome this conflict? They know each other, but they don't at the same time. It is not the same face-to-face education. So it's a kind of challenge. They know each other, you know, they want to be physically together, but they can't. So
yeah, that's a situation. It really emerged here as well, and I think everywhere where online education was developed. And you connect with your camera to 65 students, but even most of them place a frozen image of themselves, so you don't really see even their faces, not their reactions, and they don't interact between them. But later on, you come to the conclusion they create their own WhatsApp groups with the whole students, the whole number of students of general didactic subject or whatever, and then they interact virtually with Instagram, with WhatsApp. So in this sense, that is why I insisted on possible problematic uses of social networks when everything is delivered online. Communication obviously could not be delivered in the same way. How communication is developed then? Obviously through the use of social networks that somehow try to replace the normal communication processes. But it's like when you meet people, when you meet friends, or you talk to them by WhatsApp, obviously the human condition and the human attitude, it's not the same.
okay, thank you, Rebecca. And the next question relates to young learners from Engin Akgöz, and he's trying to ask the attention span. So so it is quite short, you know, the attention span for the young learners, and they have the computer in front of them. And as you mentioned in your lecture, you talk about addicted behavior. So kind of link between the two. We have to keep them motivated, but there is the danger of being becoming addicted.
Yeah, that's something that's why I insisted in my presentation of some dangers of this online learning, because obviously when students are young and they do not have the supervision of an adult quite often as desired, they can make addictive uses of those social networks. I mean, during the pandemic situation, some lessons were delivered via Instagram, uploading videos, and students can download them and watch them as many times as desired or as requested. But who is controlling the number of hours a student is using a smartphone, a tablet PC, etc.? So that is why, when I insisted materials need to be physically, virtually attractive to catch up and try to expand the student's attention process, considering it is less than 40 minutes. And then these technologies must support learning as interactive tools, but just conceived as powerful interactive tools, nothing more. Because if not, possible addictive uses may emerge, and it can cause serious consequences, especially in teenagers.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So I can say we have been bombarded by questions and contributions and greetings from different parts of the country. And this is because you have given such a fascinating and informative presentation. Maybe having the last question, I promise, the last one. Okay. The lucky guy is Dilek Korkmaz. I have a question, of course. I am an English teacher in a primary school. As we know, we use lots of games with the young learners. How can we be sure whether the games are pedagogically appropriate for our students. How can we check it in gamification as well? Thank you very much for your contributions. Yep, the last one.
Dear Dilek, I started my professional development in a primary school as an English teacher, and trust me, society has greatly evolved, and gamification now somehow has expanded in society. Most of the times, even when we present contents virtually, we are not sure enough they are going to work and they are going to take our students' attention and interest. So I totally agree with you with the question you raised. In the sense, how can we sure whether games are pedagogically appropriate for our students? Whenever we introduce games or digital games in the development of our teaching learning processes, we need to have very clear what are the aims of the activity. I mean, if we are teaching 10 years old students, obviously, if we consider the psychological development and the pedagogical development, somehow we can know for sure the type of games they like or dislike, or those that are most suitable for their ages. However, in order to get the most of that resource, of that pedagogical resource, is quite difficult. That's why in my case, I try to ask myself as a curricular planner, what are the aims I want to pursue with this activity, and how I'm going to distribute my students. In primary education, I think it's very important to distribute students in heterogeneous groups, because they interact, students with different intellectual and cognitive abilities interact with each other. And if you propose a game, they can act as tutors of other students and feel integrated in the same group, participating in that kind of game learning.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope that answers the question very well. Okay, so yes, this is a kind of the end. Before I just pass the word to my colleague, Dr. Han, I just would like to thank again. So that has been quite fascinating. And we all covered lots of topics that we need to cover in our recent educational settings. As a person from outside the discipline, I teach literature. Well, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And I just would like to once again raise the issue. Our students can get contact with Rebecca for further postgraduate opportunities. And I'm sure that she will be more than happy to welcome you all. And then also, as a final reminder, please fill the certificate of participation to get your certificates, which you can use in private sectors and governmental positions, hopefully in the future. And this is the end of my job. Thank you, Rebecca. A great pleasure. And I just send my greetings and then all my feelings to the professors and students in different parts of the Turkey and Spain as well. Yes, Turgay Hocam, the word is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear participants. I'm very happy to make this event real with the contribution of many people. But at the beginning, I want to thank all my students, all the students, because they have spent their times to sit back and in front of the screen. They were very eager to listen to us, listen to from Rebecca, and therefore I want to end this session with the thanks, with the special thanks. At the beginning, I explained that as we do not have any chance to meet physically, I wish the days will come. Why not to meet online? So it was a great pleasure for me to have the first lecture series in here. Thanks a lot for enlightening us on the very recent issue during COVID-19, how to increase the quality of teaching, and a broad sense of this issue has been discussed till now. And many questions have been asked to Rebecca. And of course, we are very happy now. And this joint organization received invaluable support from both people, institutions, and therefore I need to thank them, starting from dear Dr. Professor Rebecca Soler Costa and her university and her students, and also for accepting our invitation. And next year, Professor Dr. Gencer Alkaliç, the Dean of the Faculty of Letters of Kafkas University, and my co-moderator, dear Dr. Selçuk Şentürk, as a faculty member of Kafkas University. And a special thanks again goes to dear Professor Dr. Mustafa Naci Kayaoğlu, who is the head of the English Language and Literature Department of Karadeniz Technical University. And again, a special thanks goes to Tuncer Aydemir for technical supports and the motivation who provide for us. They spend many hours to support us technically. And we have further plans, of course, to continue such academic lecture series. New announcements will be available soon. I believe that the participants today will be eager to participate for our next further lecture series. Thank you for all. Thanks a lot again. Rebecca, would you like to end this session with your feelings?
Thank you very much, tour guide. First of all, I would like to thank you all because you make me feel like at home, and never better said. You create a very comfortable atmosphere. It was very easy, very profitable to deliver, first of all, the presentation of my university, and secondly, the main objective, the research developed my presentation, my paper presentation. And it was a great pleasure having this very motivated audience because they raised me questions, and that's something always very interesting. Institutionally, I'm very thankful for your institution, Ordu and Kafkas University, and all the representatives who attended my session. Especially my thanks to my friend, Professor Han and Selçuk, because they participate with me in the process. They offer a very nice welcoming, and for sure I'm at your disposal, as you well know. I would like to offer myself to your students. I welcome all of you. If I can be of any help, you've got my email. Just feel free to email me and ask me whatever I can be of help. And I guess, as Dr. Han said, soon frontiers will be reopened and we will be able to travel around, so you can come to visit us in our country and we can go the other way around. Thank you very much for this big opportunity to share common knowledge between two countries, two very friendly countries as Turkey and Spain. And it was a great pleasure to participate in this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.